everyone, it's Leiphart here, and I'm going to be sharing 2 cards created with a gel printing plate, several Essentials by Ellen products, and Catherine Pooler's newest release with refreshed inks which have just arrived in the shop. Almost all of the basic supplies I've used in this video are 20% off right now during Ellen Hutson's art supply sale. These include the gel plate, brayer, mini stencil mat, misty stamping tool, blending brush, jewel picker, and more. I've linked to the sale in the supply links below, so be sure to check it out. There are so many great deals. I'll be using the 3 new refreshed Spring Fling inks from Catherine Pooler to create my gel printed background panels. It's a Boy is now Oh Boy, Sweet 16 is now 16 Candles, and Mint to Be is now Minted. The new colors are definitely brighter than the colors on the left. Here are the ink comparisons using the direct-to-paper inking technique so you can see the differences a little better. In all the samples, the original color is on the left and the refreshed color is on the right. While I do love the new colors, I still haven't decided which I love more, but as with all Catherine Pooler inks, it's hard not to love them. I'll be using 2 other new release products from Catherine Pooler, including the Fan Dance background stamp and the Origami Cheers stamp set and coordinating dies. I'll introduce the Essentials by Ellen products as I get to the card making portion of this video. Let's get started on creating the gel printed backgrounds. I'm going to make 2 cards, one in the vertical or portrait layout and one in the horizontal or landscape layout. I'll be mimicking a proper landscape with a blue sky, purple horizon, and green grass, so to speak. I just tap the ink pad on the gel plate to add color. After I've added enough ink, I use the brayer and roll it back and forth several times. When done, press your cardstock onto the inked and brayered plate and make sure that you press down in all areas that you want the ink to transfer onto your cardstock. You can also do selective inking with your fingers for a unique look. The thinner and smoother the cardstock, the better the results. I'm using 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock here. Believe it or not, printer paper works great too, but for sturdiness, you'll have to adhere to a thicker cardstock panel if you're die cutting it, and I'll be doing that here too, even with the 80-pound cardstock. I've trimmed down the sheet of paper so it fits in the mini Misty, and when I ink up the Fan Dance background, I want to make sure that the ink colors correspond with the gel printed colors on the panel for a tone-on-tone look. As I ink up the background, I wipe a bit of it off as I want them to be as close to a third of the background as possible. Before I close the lid on the Misty, I use a blending brush to soften the edges between colors, which will help give me the perfect ombre effect. The only color that I need more of is 16 Candles, so I stamp that again down the center of the background, soften the edges, and now my background is done. I just love the combination of the gel printed background with the stamped colors. I use an acrylic block with VersaFine Onyx Black pigment ink to stamp the cranes from the Origami Cheers set on Neenah 110-pound heavyweight cardstock. Then I die cut them. Next, I'll be using the Abstract Mountain cover plate from the Essentials by Ellen line on the first gel print I made. Since I want a sturdier background, I'm going to adhere this to a 110-pound piece of cardstock. I'm using a tape runner here, but you can use whatever you like. If you use liquid glue, you'll have to wait until it fully dries before die cutting. I've cut my card base and a panel from Essentials by Ellen white linen cardstock, which is my favorite cardstock. I used the stitching lines dies taped together to create a textured pattern on that panel. After determining the positions of the cranes on my die cut panel, I move everything to my mini Misty and prepare to stamp the sentiment. The sentiment, All the Best, fits nicely in the upper right-hand corner, and I stamp that using VersaFine Onyx Black pigment ink. I use my tape runner to adhere the stitched panel to the card base. Then I use a combination of foam tape and glue dots to attach the cranes to the panel for a variation in dimension. When all the cranes have been attached to the panel, I trim off the overhanging bits and use liquid glue to attach the gel printed panel to the card. To finish the card, I add a few super shiny silver stars in the sky portion, and now this card is done. It's simple, but with the colored die cut panel, the textured linen panel, and the shiny stars, there's so much to look at. For my second card, I'm using Catherine Pooler's Scallops and Dots dies to cut out the gel printed and stamped background. I cut the inner rectangle as is and leave that panel at 80 pounds. Then I adhere the remaining portion of the panel to a 110-pound piece of cardstock and cut the scalloped frame from that. This is because I wanted the scalloped frame to be thicker for visual interest. Next, I've die cut the Mondo hello words from black cardstock, and I'll be using the big scripted hi on my second card. I stamped the butterfly and bird so I can see what they both look like in the space above the letter I. I settle on the butterfly with the dot in the place of the butterfly's head. I just love the way this looks, so I'm going to layer the die cut word for a bit more dimension. Once again, I cut a card base from white linen cardstock and adhere the middle panel with a tape runner. I use 1/8 inch score tape on the frame to give it an extra boost of dimension. I finish the card by attaching the die cut word to the panel with liquid glue and the butterfly with foam tape. Now my card is done. Here's a quick review of the 2 cards I made using the gel plate, new Catherine Pooler Release products, and Essentials by Ellen products. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you're inspired to try gel printing with your Catherine Pooler ink pads and more. Be sure to check out the Ellen Hutson Art Supplies sale in the links below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.